And really what I want to do is I'm going to tell you first of all what I want to say, and then we'll kind of work our way back around to reflecting on it. I'm really just here for one purpose, and that's to encourage you to let your life be determined by eternity. Or, to put that differently, let your dash be defined by the line. It's kind of like I just want to ask a question, really. I just want to ask a somewhat uncomfortable question, but it's an important question, and the question is, like, how do you know you're not wasting your life? I think you probably ought to ask this question. You know, we're always kind of evaluating our life in different ways. You meet each other up and you say, how you doing? And I don't know how seriously you take the question, but that's what it means, like evaluate the moment, like how you doing? And you might be like, I'm doing great, or I'm doing fine, or I'm doing terrible, or whatever, and you're evaluating this particular moment of your life. And we do this with our days, right? Like, I'd imagine that for some of y'all, even though you're in high school and you're big and you're growing up, you probably get home at the end of the school day and your mom or your dad still asks you, how was your day? And they want you to evaluate, like, was it a good day, was it a bad day? And maybe depending on your personality or your relationship with your folks or the type of day you had, you might tell them a lot, or you might just say a little. Day was fine, day was good, day was bad, whatever it is. And we're evaluating our days, and at a certain point, you're going to get to the end of your life, and you're going to look back on it, and you're going to say, how was my life? Like, was it well spent? Was it good? Was it wasted? You're going to get to the end of your days on earth, and on the other side, even more so, you're going to look back and you're going to want to be able to know, I didn't waste my life. So how do you know if you're wasting it? Now, I don't know how often you think about this, but I think about this all the time. And it's kind of weird. I think about death a lot because it's coming for us, you know? And that's where this idea of the dash comes in. And maybe you heard this. This was memed out about 10 or so years ago. I may have missed you. I'm not sure. But it's this idea of live your dash, like live your one life. And it comes from a cemetery. And actually yesterday, so I don't know what y'all did with Extended Rec, but I hope y'all had a good time. And I used the opportunity for some introvert time. I love y'all, but I'm an introvert, so people are great, but they're exhausting. And so I just got to be alone and went to a coffee shop and reading and doing some work and different things. And this coffee shop was right by a cemetery, and I love to do this. I know it's weird, but I just took a walk through the cemetery. And I'm looking at all these tombstones, you know, and there's all these names like Leo and Ella and Thomas and Rachel, and there's all these people, none of whom I know, and some of them had like important positions. This one guy was the president of the University of Tennessee, and this person was a pastor, and this person was a politician and a teacher, and it seems like some of them probably had a lot of money because they had really big tombstones, and others not so much because they were just little tombstones, and there was always like a birth date and a death date, and I found there was no two tombstones that had the exact same birth date and death date. They were all different. But the one thing they all had in common was this dash in between the birth date and the death date. That's the one thing that holds us all together, is that you get one life, and this dash represents your one life. Like, you have a dash, and the question is, are you going to waste your dash, or is your dash going to be well spent? Is your life going to be something worthwhile? And this hit home for me again recently because I heard this story. I don't know if you would have heard it in your parts of the country. It's about this young couple that's actually from my part of the country, and I'm going to show you a picture of them. You may have heard this on the news. Their names are Davy and Natalie Lloyd, and he's 23, she's 21, and they're followers of Jesus, good kids, or good people. And Davy's story is he grew up in a Christian home and raised to love the Lord, and his family was involved in missionary work all over the world, and so they did a lot of things like that. And he too was like, he was a lover of God from a young age, and he always knew he wanted to be a missionary to Haiti. Like, ever since he was a kid, if you ask him, what do you want to do? You know, people ask you that question, what do you want to do when you grow up? And oftentimes the answer changes as you grow. Like, when I was young, I wanted to be a professional athlete, and I told you, that dream died pretty quickly. And then I decided I wanted to own my own business and make a lot of money and take over the world. And it was the late 90s, and so I wanted to start a telecommunications company and to become a boss, you know. And then at 16, my life radically changed when I heard the Lord call me into ministry. He said, ministry is going to be your job. And so I made a turn, and from that point forward, my life has been about vocational ministry. And there's this progression for most of us, but for Davey, it was always the same. 5 years old, what do you want to do? I want to be a missionary to Haiti. 10 years old, what do you want to do? I want to be a missionary to Haiti. As he grows up, he wants to be a missionary to Haiti. And so this was his vision. And as he got older, it stayed the same. And he was really faithful in this to the Lord. And then in college, he met this girl, Natalie. And she was sweet, and she was cute, and she was a nice girl. And he really liked her, but he was a little worried, you know, because he knew what he wanted to do. And so he arranged it to where they went on this trip to Haiti together to do some short-term missions work. And he was just kind of watching. And sure enough, she loved it. She was like, oh, I want to be a missionary to Haiti. And he was like, well, I want to marry you. And so they got married, and just a couple years ago, they got married actually in June, I think, of 2022. And then they started making preparations as they were going to launch into life to go to Haiti together. And so they raised support and they communicated this vision. And in January, they moved over there. And they started working among these Haitian people and showing them the love and grace of Jesus and telling them about a God who loves them and wants to be with them and wants to redeem their lives. And they were working with orphans and they were working with the community and all sorts of things. And it was going pretty well as they got started until just a couple of weeks ago, they accidentally got caught up in some rival gang issues. And they were walking out of church and this gang down there in Haiti shot them as they walked out of church and killed them, and then burned their bodies to reinforce the point. And yeah, it's like, wow, that's a letdown. That's tragic. It's like, is this a tragedy? Well, yes. You don't even have to believe in God to look at this and say, that's terrible. Like, nobody would be like, yeah, good for that. No, it's a tragedy, but maybe the more important question is this a waste? Like, was their life a waste? And that's a trickier question because it depends on your perspective. And if you're just looking at this from the standpoint of right now, if you're just evaluating the moment in light of the moment, then, I mean, it kind of seems like maybe it was, or at least it was hard to call it a success, you know? And yet, if you're looking at it from the standpoint of eternity, then there's no question, because that's a different vantage point. Of course it wasn't a waste. Tragic as it may be, that was a life well spent. That was a dash defined by the line. And so the question we got to wrestle with today is, how are you going to order your life? And so the word of the day is pace. And what you're going to do over the next couple of hours is you're going to kind of lay out a plan for your life. And you're going to do this with your friends and with your leaders. And as you do this, it's critical that you remember that the pace is determined by the race. Like the pace that you're running is determined by the length of the race that you're in. How fast you run depends on how far you got to go. If you're in a sprint, then you're hitting it, you are dashing, you are booking it, you are moving as quickly as you can. But if you're in a marathon, not so much. You got to pace yourself. You got to slow down. Your rhythms of running are different because if you hit it so hard up front, you're going to run out of gas and not be able to finish the race. Again, your pace is defined by the race that you're running. That's the question that you have to think through. That's the thing that we're wrestling with today, is the pace of your life and how you will define it. And you might think about it like this. Like, think about picture like a timeline. So you have like the beginning point of history and then a timeline of all history running into eternity. And there it is. And your life is just, your dash is just like a tiny little dot. And honestly, it's almost impossible to scale this because the line never ends. And if we were to put this to scale from the beginning point of time till right now, and your life, your dash, your years wouldn't even be visible. It'd be so small. But we're going to put it on there so you can kind of see it, and that's your life. And you got to decide if you're going to live your dash for this moment, or if you're going to live in light of the bigger picture of eternity. Is your dash going to be defined by right now, or is your dash going to be defined by the line? That's the question that's in front of us today as we come back to Psalm chapter 23. Such a beautiful psalm. I know you've read it so many times, but I want you to keep soaking yourselves in these words. So maybe you know what it says by now, but let's take we're going to look at verses 5 and 6 today, and we're going to look at some key words like goodness and love and forever. But I want to back up one more time and look at the whole thing. Psalm chapter 23, it is a psalm of David, and you know how it goes. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He guides me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." That's Psalm 23. Now, before we look at verses 5 and 6, I want to notice a couple of things about the poem as a whole. It is a poem. Don't forget that. And when you write a poem, you're not just throwing words together. You're doing it in really intentional ways. And this poem is designed in some unique ways that I hope you can see that there's some ways it's structured that are supposed to communicate very subtly. You're never going to see this the first time, but if you keep looking, you start to see more. And the original language, we've mentioned this, is in Hebrew. And in the Hebrew, the poem is 20 lines long. And the 10th line is, "You are with me." And the 20th line is, "I will dwell in your house forever." So God is with me and I am with him. When we say that this poem is about the with God life, we're not making it up. This poem is an invitation to live the with God life. And there's another feature that's, I think, kind of important to see, and it has to do with the word Lord. Maybe you notice that the word Lord is only mentioned twice. You find it at the beginning and you find it at the end. It kind of brackets the poem. Right, the Lord is my shepherd, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. But it's even more precise in, again, the original language. So the way it works is in the original, the first two words of the psalm are actually the title of it. A psalm is one word, and of David is the second word, and then Lord is the first word of the poem itself, but it's the third word in this whole thing. So Lord is the third word. And then you get to the end, and the very last phrase, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In Hebrew, it's the third to last word is Lord, and then unto length of days. Now, we know we're getting into the details, but follow me if you can. He's very intentionally structured this so that Lord is the third word and Lord is the third to last word. And it had to be the third because of the title, but he's making a point that the Lord is the beginning and end of the poem. And the point is that the poem is a microcosm of reality. That God is the beginning and end of all things. He is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the center and the circumference. He's the bounded edges and the full middle. He's everywhere and he's everything. And of course, the thing here is that it's not just a statement about reality. It's an invitation to you to make your life match the poem. It's an invitation to you to allow your life to come in line with reality. For you to make God your everything. For you to make him your beginning and your end, your Alpha and Omega, your center and circumference, your bounded edges, the one who fills the entire middle, your everything. That's the invitation. And as you make your plan today, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to realize that you have an ordered list of priorities that drives your life. You have a hierarchy of values. Certain things are more important to you than other things. And what is important to you is what determines every decision you make. It determines where you draw lines in the sand, what you will and won't do, where you will and won't go, how you'll spend your time, how you spend your money, what you'll do with your life. It's all driven by what matters to you, by your priorities. And the psalm is saying, man, you got to put, if you want the with God life, you got to put God first. You got to make God everything. And yet, this is where it gets, when you get practical, this is where it gets kind of tricky because you think, okay, I'm going to put God first. What does that mean? Maybe it's like, all right, number one, God. Number two, I don't know, family. Number three, school, whatever it is. And that's kind of dangerous, right? Like, yeah, God's first, but if you just make a list like that, then you might fall into the trap of, I'm going to do the God thing, and then when I'm done doing the God thing, I'm going to do this other thing. And that's not the answer. Like, if you do that, then you're going to become one of these people who, you do the God thing when you're at church, but you do the non-God thing everywhere else. And that's not the kind of life y'all want to live. And so it's more complex than that. One time, I heard somebody say one time, it's not so much that God is the first item on your list. It's more that God is the piece of paper that you're writing on and the pen with which you write. And I remember thinking, man, that's like cool and poetic and stuff, but I don't know what the heck that even means. So I don't know how to get at this. Maybe it's like God himself is number one, and then God therefore, number two, God therefore, number three. Now, I don't know what these things are for you. I don't know what is on your ordered list of priorities. Maybe it's different than mine. I bet it is, given the stage of life that we're in. But I imagine for some of you, some of what's important to you, some of what's toward the top of the list is like events that you do, things that you're into. Maybe it is a sports thing. Maybe you're an athlete and you love playing, whatever it is, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, volleyball, hockey. Sorry if I skipped your sport, lacrosse, I don't know. Maybe you're either really good at it or it's just fun for you and the team is fun, you like to compete, and maybe that's your thing. And for others, it's maybe not sports, maybe it's more the arts. Maybe you're like my daughter. She's a show choir queen, man. She's so good. And when she sings, it's like an angel, y'all. It's like the world stops. Maybe you have one of those voices that when you start singing, everybody just stops because it's just beautiful and we're locked in and we're listening. Maybe you draw pictures. Maybe you're in coding. Maybe you're math. I don't know what it is. And it might not be an activity. Maybe it's a vision for your life in the future. Maybe it's, you want a certain type of family or you want a certain type of career. You're going to be an engineer or a teacher or a veterinarian or a doctor or whatever it is. And I'm not saying all these things are bad. Many of them are quite good, but I'm saying if you want to get this plan in proper order and if you want to pace yourself wisely, then you have to make God everything. You got to bathe it all in him and soak it all in him and make it all about him. And yet if you're an honest person, if you can hear your heart, there's times when you wonder like, all right, yeah, I get that, but why? Right? Like God, okay, great, I understand God is big, but I also can't see him, and he doesn't always do what I want him to do, and if I'm going to make God everything, then there's a lot of things that seem like they might be kind of fun that I'm supposed to not do, and so why would I make God my everything every day for the rest of my life? And that's a question that we ask, and that's a question I think the psalm knows that we're going to ask, and that's what takes us to verses 5 and 6. I think the psalm answers the question for us in two different ways. I think the answer to the question of why should I center my life on God, in verse 5, the answer is because God is better. That's the first thing it says. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life. Let's unpack this. Let's look at these words. We know we're talking about God, but we're doing so in some particular ways. We're using these words to describe him, and the first word is goodness. And what is goodness? Well, it's good. Well, what is good? It's quality. It's when something is what it's supposed to be. It's when something is wonderful or impressive or beautiful. And what it's saying is not just that God is another good thing, but God is the essence of all goodness. He is goodness itself, which means every good thing you've ever experienced is a reflection of him. Every good taste you've ever put in your mouth, whether it's chocolate or steak or I don't know what you're into, but every good taste is designed to draw your attention to how satisfying he is. Every beautiful thing that you've ever seen with your eyes, whether it's a sunset or a person, maybe a boy or a girl, maybe a mother and child together, maybe a sweet old couple, grandma and grandpa just loving on each other. Everything you've ever seen that's beautiful is designed to direct your attention to his beauty. Every impressive feat that we've laid eyes on, whether it's, Steph or Caitlin hitting a three or somebody singing or whatever it might be, all of this is designed to make us say, wow, the God who inspired this is amazing, and it's all just sort of crumbles. It's all just glimpses of his goodness. And so we're talking about the essence of all goodness, and we're also talking about love. This is where it gets a little funky because it's like love. But if you look at other translations of Psalm 23, you might see a different word. Sometimes it's goodness and mercy. Sometimes it's goodness and loving kindness, which is not a real word until somebody made it up. And the problem is it's not the normal word for love. There's a normal word for love, but this isn't it. This is a different word. It's the word chesed. It's a Hebrew word. You got to make I'm not going to have you say it because I don't want you to spit on each other. You got to make this funky sound in the back of your throat. Chesed, and it's a love that's really hard to describe. It's a unique kind of love. It's not like any other love. It's like a covenant love. It's God's love. It's loyal love. It's a love that defies explanation. And so we're talking about like the essence of all goodness and a love so good you can't put it into words. And notice what it says about them. They're not just static. Surely your goodness and love will follow me. The word is pursue, come after you. So the goodness and love of God are coming after you, and not in a good way. I mean, not in a bad way. Not in like coming after you, but like chasing you. It's like I used to come home from work. Whenever Claire was little, I'd come home from work, and she was this little 18-month-old, just bouncy toddler, and she wore these cloth diapers, and so she had this like pink diaper cover that was this fluffy. She just had a pink fluffy booty all the time. And I'd come home from work, and little tiny Claire would be in there, and as soon as I'd walk in, she'd look at me, and she would say, I chase you, and then she would start running away from me. And you know what she's saying, right? She's saying, Daddy, are you going to chase me? And I don't care how tired I was or how stressed I was. I chased her every time. All the goodness and love I've got is coming after her. And what we're saying is that all the goodness and love themselves is coming after you. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but the way the poem describes God is sort of different in different places. At the front of the poem, God's out front leading us to these different places. And then you get to the middle of the poem, and he's beside us in the dark valley. And now you get to the end, and he's behind us, chasing us. And the point is not that God moves around. God is not bound by space, so he doesn't have to move around. The point is that you are surrounded by the essence of all goodness and a love so perfect it defies explanation. Find me a better deal, right? Like, make me a better offer. God is the treasure. God is the prize. God is the reward. And the second reason that we get is in verse 6. The first reason is because God is better. That's why you should center your life on God. And the second reason is because eternity is coming. Because forever is on the way. Forever. For length of days. Not just for a long time. Forever and ever and ever. And you got to decide. This is the fundamental decision. You got to decide if you're going to base your life, if you're going to define your dash by immediate gratification or eternal perfection. Because you can live for immediate gratification. You can say, I want to be about what I can get right now. I'm interested in the pleasures of life that I can receive right now, and that's going to be my focus, and that's what I'm going to do. Or you can say, I'm going to base my life on eternal perfection. And I know heaven is strange, and the idea of forever is weird, and the Bible doesn't tell us a lot of details, but rest assured, heaven, eternity, will be everything good about this life better without everything bad. And the best thing about it is that God will be there. And that's the offer. Those are the options. And I'm going to be real with y'all. I'm going to shoot straight. I confess, I do not think that this is a hard decision. Like you're literally living in the middle of the story. You are not to the end. And no story makes sense from the middle. Never do you watch a great movie and you get about halfway done and you're like, I think I've had enough. I think I know what's going on. No, you don't. You got to watch to the end. You got to know the end of the story to make sense of the whole thing. And you're currently living in the middle of the story. And God's saying, I know the end of the story. Can I define your life by it, please? That's the decision that you got to make. And I know there's a part of you, though, that we wonder. It's like we wonder. We doubt. We're not sure about heaven. Is it real or is it just a pipe dream? Is it just wish fulfillment? Is it just a projection of my desires onto the cosmic screen? We wonder if these whispers of hope we hear from our hearts are telling us the truth. Could it be true that there's something better, that there's something else, that there's something more? And the world around you says, it's a dream, it's not true, it's false, it's an empty hope. The world around you says, the only thing that matters is what you can see, but I'm telling you that the world doesn't always tell the truth. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's here. And just because it's not here yet doesn't mean it's coming. I'm here to testify as best I can that heaven is real and it's coming. That eternity is reality and it's on the way. And the fool is the person who defines their life by the moment, by right now alone, the middle of the story. The wise person is the one who defines their life by eternity. So may you be wise. May the pace you're running be determined by the length of the race that you're in. May the rhythms of your life be driven by the reality of eternity. May your dash be defined by the line. I want to bless you guys. Let me say a blessing over you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and guide your pace and give you peace. I love you guys. Finish strong.